All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
Wow. Let me just get my credibility glasses on so I can drink in the magic that is our crowd. I love this audience. The Tuesday recorded audience is my favorite recorded audience. Kim is here.
Kim, how are you?
Yes, and so is Tony. We are at full strength.
Thanks, Tony.
As we tackle the world and America, and I even have news out of the Bay Area. And, you know, we started in the Bay Area on KGO Radio, which is a huge talk radio station there. And now they deleted the station, you know, like just like Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon want to get rid of the Department of Education. They did get rid of KGO Radio. But after 2 years of languishing with no audience, they brought the station back. Only they're just going to run a bunch of Sean Hannity and Mark Levin and Armstrong and Getty. So it's not really KGO, but that is the news. And I'm getting a lot of email from KGO listeners and Bay Area people as I say we started in the Bay Area. So always wild to hear what's happening there, but sadly, they are a ghost ship, so you can forget about them. We are here, and the magic of this show is bringing people like Kim and bringing people like Albert and Tony along as we continue to ride the ship of state, even as it lists to one side. Now, I am going to start, well, we have all kinds of stuff on the show today. In fact, in the first hour, before I even get to a Pulitzer Prize winner, I've got Richard Greene, the Civics Dean, who's going to talk about these recess appointments. I think he's of the general view that they almost don't matter, meaning these confirmations, I'll let him expand on it, but essentially his feeling is these confirmations, whether or not they go through, in a sense, it doesn't matter. Now, I'll let him build that out, and if he doesn't, then I'll build it out. But I think they do matter, but we'll see. He's a very learned guy and knows his stuff. We'll see how he frames this entire thing. Now, questions about the election itself. Was it legitimate? Were there attempts made to jimmy this election in one way or another, to manipulate it in some way? I've heard the argument. Donald Trump cheats at everything he does. Elon Musk cheats at everything he does. You're telling me that Trump and Musk get together for the most important election of their lives, one to stay out of prison, the other to have unfettered power, and there's no cheating going on? It's extraordinary, especially when one of them has a tech connection through Starlink to tabulations of these votes. So I'll take a meeting on that, always, because as I say, I think there are elements here that are undeniable. And I've heard a couple of credible explanations for what could have happened, one of which I will share with you in this first hour. We're a 2-hour live show, I should mention, so I keep calling first hour, second hour. That's why I do that. In the second hour, so I will pay that off for you. You'll hear from someone with I think, a credible explanation as to what might have happened, and you can decide whether you feel it's legit or not. Then in the second hour, David Cay Johnston, and he's the Pulitzer Prize winner and Trumpologist, and he will give us some thoughts on what's happening with these appointments and what this second Trump administration may actually do to America and how it looks. Also, we'll touch on what's happening in Ukraine and the green light given to the Ukrainians to use these missiles for missile strikes inside Russia and how that changes the world in a potentially dramatic way. So all of that still to come, plus Jefferson Graham in the second hour as well. So we'll, on Tuesdays, we get into some tech. We'll do that hour number 2. So
The Mark Thompson Show.
before I get into the heavy stuff, there's something that's happened in San Francisco, and it's not KGO coming back on and the Armstrong and Getty and Sean Hannity and all those talk show right-wingers coming on that station. No, it is a booze cruise in San Francisco that erupts into chaos. And apparently this supposedly fun event devolved quickly into a shouting match. Dozens of passengers refused entry on board, ticket holders complaining. The party, which was supposed to offer the chance to mingle with the beautiful people on a 150-foot luxury yacht, ended with patrons throwing bottles and calling the cops instead.
What?
Yeah.
It was supposed to be like a Friendsgiving, right?
A Friendsgiving. Isn't that sweet?
We're thankful for each other, right? Everything peaceful, calm, goodwill toward each other.
Yes, they were to embark near the Embarcadero, which is a good place to embark when you're embarcaderoing. And they were supposed to be on this, again, this cruise. It was, according to the Eventbrite description, people would be able to dance, drink, and stargaze on a multi-million-dollar yacht while sailing the, quote, Insta-worthy San Fran Bay, meaning you're going to love all the pictures you'll take on San Francisco. But you can see the pictures now of people trying to crash the gate at the Embarcadero. They offered a gorgeous, fun-filled crowd in the Eventbrite description. But there was a group of 30 people there for a birthday party, said one ticket holder, and none of us got on.
I think they started drinking early.
They were throwing bottles, Kim.
Mm-hmm.
And they waited to board at 9 p.m. Many onlookers said they'd never seen a long line move so slowly. Around 9:45, organizers hastily shut the gate and started turning away dozens of ticket holders. People were like, what the F? It's an outright clown show, said one. Look at the damn thing. It's just a modestly large yacht. Oh, people were angry that it wasn't living up to the multi-million-dollar super yacht billing. So apparently 60 to 70 people, they say, would be okay with going home after paying $47 apiece. Oh, he said, I guess the organizers thought that it would be okay to turn away 60 or 70 people.
They were not having it. They were angry.
Yeah,
Drunk.
exactly.
This is a word from the Lord, and he's not happy.
Yeah, the Lord doesn't like to wait online.
Oh, there's the gate. Shut.
The gate is shutting. Anyway, that
Happy
is the
Friendsgiving
fun.
to you, too.
Yeah, you think America's devolving. You still can't take a Friendsgiving cruise in San Francisco Bay without those issues. So,
The Mark Thompson Show.
thank you for catching that. Kim caught that story, and it is a good one to get us started. Here, speaking of getting us started, is Luis, first into the Super Chat today. Has Ted Nugent been confirmed as head of Fish and Wildlife? Makes as much sense as appointing a fracker to head the EPA. What about Mike Lindell? Hashtag circus. That it is a circus, and there's a part of this that I think is deliberately a circus, deliberately noisy. It's kind of what Trump wants. He wants to own the libs. He wants to shake up government. That's kind of his brand, you know. And so I think the more controversial a pick on some level, the more it plays into Trump's hands.
I think it's the fracker for energy instead of the EPA, but same thing.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, the EPA head is now I'm spacing it now. What he's a lobbyist, I believe, and he's there to obviously to dismantle the EPA. And I'm sorry, they all run together. Obviously,
Zeldin is his name.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. Is it Lee Zeldin? I forget.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So I think in this atmosphere, it's worth noting probably the highest profile controversial pick amidst a group of fairly controversial picks is the Matt Gaetz pick. And the Matt Gaetz revelations, which have been, as you're aware, very much in the zeitgeist of an investigation in the House Ethics Committee, they are coming out, and they will come out. I mean, one way or another, they will come out. And one of the ways they'll come out is in media. And before I bring on Richard Greene, the Civics Dean, who I think has an interesting take on all of these various nominations, I want you to see the revelations from last night. So these revelations did last night, as Juju Chang from ABC was able to sit down with one of the lawyers for one of the women who is associated with Matt Gaetz. Here, this is a quick report from last night.
Tonight with new reporting on President-elect Donald Trump's pick for Attorney General Matt Gaetz. Tonight, our Juju Chang in the interview, what the lawyer for two young women says they told a House Ethics Committee testifying Matt Gaetz paid them for sex. The House Ethics Committee had been investigating Gaetz, and sources say that committee was preparing to release its findings. But Gaetz resigned from Congress when Trump nominated him for AG, ending the investigation. Tonight, the lawyer for those two women who testified revealing what they shared with the committee, one of them saying they witnessed Gaetz having sex with a minor. Gaetz denies any wrongdoing, and tonight we have learned the president-elect is standing by Gaetz and is now working the phones himself with Republican senators to shore up support for Gaetz. Nightline anchor Juju Chang leading us off with the interview.
By the way, just stop for a second, Tony. It's worth noting that Trump really wants this pick to go through. This isn't just rhetoric. What I'm hearing from people in Washington is Trump, they don't say wants to die on this hill, but it's that kind of commitment to getting Gaetz in. He certainly doesn't like to be told no to begin with. And even as Gaetz takes on water, Trump is doubling down so far. But go ahead with the report, Tony. Thank you.
For the first time, we're hearing what two young women say they told the House Ethics Committee about President-elect Donald Trump's pick for Attorney General, former Congressman Matt Gaetz. The lawyer for the women telling me his clients testified Gaetz gave them money for sex, and there are receipts.
Just to be clear, both of your clients testified that they were paid by Representative Gaetz to have sex.
That's correct. The House was very clear about that and went through each. They essentially put the Venmo payments on the screen and asked about them. And my clients repeatedly testified, what was this payment for? Well, that was for sex.
The lawyer telling me one of those women testified she also saw Gaetz having sex with a 17-year-old girl.
So at this particular event, what did your client witness?
She testified in July of 2017 at this house party. She was walking out to the pool area and she looked to her right and she saw Representative Gaetz having sex with her friend who was 17.
Sources tell ABC News that girl, who is now in her 20s, also testified in the investigation. Gaetz has denied all wrongdoing.
I have not had a relationship with a 17-year-old. That is totally false.
The House Ethics Committee was poised to release its report last week, but then Trump announced Gaetz as his pick for Attorney General, and Gaetz abruptly resigned from Congress. With that, the investigation was closed. House Speaker Mike Johnson has urged the committee to keep its report under wraps.
I believe it is very important to maintain the House's tradition of not issuing ethics reports on people who are no longer members of Congress. I think it would open Pandora's box.
But tonight, a growing number of Republican senators, including Mark Wayne Mullen of Oklahoma, say they need to see the House report as part of the confirmation process.
Absolutely, and I believe the Senate should have access to that. Now, should it be released to the public or not? That's I guess that will be part of the negotiations, but that should be definitely part of our decision making.
Mullen, who once served with Gaetz in the House, has described how the former congressman used to brag about women.
We had all seen the videos he was showing on the House floor that all of us had walked away of the girls that he had slept with.
Tonight, the president-elect standing by Matt Gaetz. A spokesman for the transition saying Matt Gaetz will be the Attorney General. He's the right man for the job and will end the weaponization of our justice system. These are baseless allegations intended to derail the second Trump administration.
David, the House Ethics Committee is set to meet on Wednesday to decide whether to release the findings in that ethics report. Now, the growing number of Senate Republicans say they need that information as part of their duty in the confirmation process.
So there you go. That's where that sits. And as I say, the information feels as though it's going to get out one way or the other. The cheating and criming, it is obvious, says Kat Love. Gaetz's definition of a relationship is sure different from mine. says Rain. Relationship, no, of course not. He's saying that because they didn't, quote, date. These reports will come out one way or another, says Pietro. Will that even matter, though, now that we live in the upside down? I want to talk to Richard Greene about that in a second. Trump will get whatever he wants, says Christopher Rubino. I think there is an aspect of that, and I've made this point over the last couple of days, that is true. Most presidents get most of the picks that they want. So I know this is insane, this group of people, incompetent, inexperienced, bizarre picks. That said, you can only block so many. So I think there's some truth to what Christopher's saying. Venmo payments, plane tickets, says Jay. His first priority is lowering the age of consent, says Jim Slayton. And big talk from Mullen at this point, says Randy. Let's see how he votes on anything. Yeah, that Mark Wayne Mullen, who you saw quoted in that piece. All right, that's a situation with Matt Gaetz as we know it, and on some level it's instructive for the other picks for the reasons that I've kind of alluded to. Right now, I'd love to bring in someone who is a brilliant political consultant, knows Congress, he knows the legislature, he knows this political world so well, and he can give us some sense of magnetic north right now. How about it for Richard Greene, the Civics Dean? Sir, hello.
Hey, Mark.
Tell me what you make of all of this, because I saw a post from you that was sobering, and it was essentially, don't sweat this in a way, because the real sweat is everything, meaning what's coming behind this. You could veto these picks, none of them could go through, and the clown car of picks behind these picks is so toxic that it'll make you forget these picks.
So, first of all, can I just say...
Hang on a second. Tony, what is it about Richard Greene that, why does it chop like that? Okay, go ahead, Richard. Sorry.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Go ahead. He's still choppy, Tony. What is the story with that? Hang on, we're working.
Can I just say,
now,
Mark,
there you go. You sound good.
See you. Yeah, can I just say, I find it hilarious that we're doing major network news pieces because someone in politics actually paid someone to have sex, when a plurality of Americans voted for someone who paid someone to have sex while his wife was pregnant with this child, all of that. So on a more moral level,
it's a 17-year-old. Okay, so that's the difference, I think.
I understand, but also it's, oh my God, he's joking about taking erectile dysfunction drugs and whatever. Listen, here's the bottom line. Donald Trump, just like we did with Bobby Kennedy, forcing him in a hostage video to eat McDonald's on the airplane. His plan, as all dictators have as their plan, is to denigrate and humiliate everybody else and to assert absolute dominance over everyone. And part of the game for Donald Trump, having been a president for 4 years, is, hey, I learned my lessons. I'm going to now be 100% dominant. If I want Matt Gaetz to be Attorney General, if I want Vladimir Putin to be Secretary of State, I'm going to frickin' do it. And I think the point that you're asking me to share is there are actually two ways that we can't do anything about it. So I mentioned that Donald Trump would become a dictator, could become a dictator, will become a dictator, not on day one, but in the first 15 seconds. And it was through the appointment of the single most important person to establish his fascistic authoritarianism, which is the attorney general. So even if for some reason he backs off on Matt Gaetz and he doesn't get the confirmation and he gives up, guess who's hiding in the wings? One acting attorney general as bad as Matt Gaetz or worse, after another acting attorney general as bad as Matt Gaetz or worse. And that is true for Tulsi Gabbard. That's true for everybody else. That is what America did on November 5th. They gave the keys to the kingdom to someone who is absolutely not going to abide by the checks and balances. So the TikTok that I just did that now has, over 60,000 views in just a couple hours, at Civics Dean, talks about a scenario, which is the Putin scenario, which is the demagogue, dictator, fascist playbook. So let's say Donald Trump puts in Matt Gaetz, says, you know what, screw all of you, Matt Gaetz is my attorney general. And they're going, oh my God, you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't do that. And so they take Donald Trump to court. And the courts, from the district court to the circuit court to the Supreme Court, say, Donald Trump, you cannot do that. You have to abide by the Constitution. You have to have the Senate play their role of advice and consent. He goes, the hell with you. Go F yourself. Because the only way to enforce the Constitution, the only way to enforce what Congress does, the only way to enforce what the judiciary does, including the Supreme Court, is through the Attorney General and the Justice Department. The Justice Department, as part of the executive branch, enforces everything. And if they choose not to, it doesn't happen.
It's so sobering because it is so believable. It's so plausible.
Of course, that's what Steve Bannon has been saying since 2015. He wants to blow everything up. And they found the guy who is willing to do it. And I honestly, Mark, I don't know, other than demanding the counting of paper ballots in swing states to absolutely prove that Donald Trump played fair and square with this election, and Elon Musk and Vladimir Putin played fair and square with this election. Other than that, I don't know how he stopped this for the next 4 years.
As you know, we're going to do a little something on this later in the hour. I believe that there should be a recounting of votes, and I'd love to just at least sleep well at night knowing that the nation let me down, as opposed to the nation was let down by the system and those manipulating it. But I want to, and we can double back to that. But I wonder if you can just go to the, if we can right now just focus on what you're speaking of. You can have your appointment as president even without a Senate confirmation. That is to say, someone can serve in the attorney generalship, let's say in this instance of Gaetz, for up to a 2-year term, I think, without any kind of Senate confirmation. Isn't that right?
Well, there are a couple ways to do it. One is a recess appointment, which means if the Senate is or the Congress is on recess for a certain amount of time, because, hey, we need people to fill positions, sure, go ahead, right? There's that, and that's a certain period of time. But also there are acting cabinet officers because we need someone to run the Justice Department.
So couldn't he appoint Gaetz to that point, just to the latter point? Couldn't he appoint Gaetz as an acting attorney general?
There are certain requirements for that, but listen, there is no shortage of sycophants who, as we saw in the Attorney General's office, when he was in for the first time, who are willing to line up to be able to do exactly and only what Donald Trump wants them to do. So it really doesn't matter whether it's Matt Gaetz or anybody else who then would surrender the Attorney General position over to the president. And Joe Biden, because he's an institutionalist, has been incredibly clear. Whatever Merrick Garland does or doesn't do, and Merrick Garland, the worst attorney general in modern history, we've got to be fine with that because that is an independent department. So Donald Trump is breaking that 100%. By the way, I just want to say on that last point, people are shocked when they hear that we have not counted one paper ballot in all of the 7 swing states. And if we're not going to count paper ballots, why the hell do we have them?
Thank you. Okay, so now on to that point. So, I was saying before you got here that it seems at least conceivable to me, okay, like I'll take a meeting on the fact that there might have been funny business, and here's why. First of all, there are legitimate, specific reasons that we're going to get to a little bit later in the hour. There are a lot of these bullet ballots that went into, for example, Maricopa. That's when somebody votes for just president. Okay, they don't vote for anything on down ballot. That's called a bullet ballot, and there are a lot of them, like way more than there would. Yeah, way more than there would be in that you'd find normally or in any past election. Okay, so that, first of all, that's a red flag. You can see prima facie evidence of that, but. Just the notion that Donald Trump, who has cheated pretty much at everything he's ever done, and Musk, who has similarly cheated at everything he's ever done, would let this election that Musk is actually connected to through Starlink go by without any plan to try to manipulate anything, that strains credulity, okay? So I'm ready to, but again, I don't know if that's enough to get them to ask for a recount, but I think the only person who can ask for a recount is Kamala Harris, isn't that right?
Yeah, and the deadline for asking for a recount in 2 of the swing states, Nevada and Wisconsin, is tomorrow.
And why do Democrats and Kamala Harris leading that parade of Democrats roll over for what they explained during the campaign was the rise of despotism and fascism in a Trump administration?
I mean, why would Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski run down to Mar-a-Lago?
Thank you.
Mark, honestly, man, I'm embarrassed and ashamed of my party. Jon Stewart did something on this last night. I think we are weak. And, they're playing, with AR-15s, and we're playing with plastic toy guns. I mean, not that I'm advocating violence, but I'm talking about that metaphorically. I put this out to a number of people, and the reaction is, well, we're not like them. We're better than them. We're going to sound like them if we contest an election. I'm saying we're not. I'm not saying we should contest an election. I say we are about to hand over the reins to a true fascist to the core, not my words, but the top military officer in the United States, without actually counting the ballots and ensuring that, to your point, a man who has never played by the rules, who has always cheated, who has teamed up with another man who is off his rocker, who happens to have the greatest technology in the world, including AI, who has teamed up with Vladimir Putin, that we're going to somehow give all of those guys the benefit of the doubt. Listen, in 2000, we were all upset when the Supreme Court stopped the counting of the votes in Florida. My point is, let's just count the votes in the most secure way that we can. There are some red flags, as you've said. And why do we have paper ballots if we're not going to count them?
So, Tony, I hadn't expected to do this, but because we have Richard here, I'd love to just run that one piece of video. Now, this is a guy who I will get on this show probably, but his timely comments and sort of the how-to with Musk involved, he explained so well to Tom Hartman yesterday. Do you have that? And I thought that, I think it was yesterday, maybe it's a couple days ago, but this guy, Stephen Spoonemore, is someone who with a real tech expertise, and you'll hear him. Yeah, you do know him. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. Yeah. So he starts with the bullet ballots that we talked about, but he'll explain, and this is the key, and we haven't touched on it yet. The key is that Musk had voter information through the petitions that he was circulating, through the ways in which he was registering voters in those swing states. He had voter information. When you add that to a desire to manipulate an outcome, you end up with this. Go ahead, Tony. Roll a little bit of this.
It's called a bullet ballot.
Right. And typically, the ones we're talking about here are people who just voted for Trump.
Correct, except that I'm increasingly thinking in a lot of cases the bullet ballot isn't there. The hack could have unfolded 2 ways. One, the e-poll books, which are all networked, all online, statewide, and it turns out most of them had very easy access for Mr. Musk because they're also were being backed up across Starlink. Have to be checked that a voter went there. Well, okay, there's 2 theories. One, toward the end of the day. They have great voter profiling on everybody. Musk had his lottery and built this list of people who had pledged to vote for Trump. They know who's actually voted because the poll book data is in front of them. So they can very accurately project what the outcome of the state was going to be. Say, we're about 30,000 votes short. Great. So you check the box on 30,000 lottery pledged Trump voters. And then, provided you have a hack in the tabulator, you add 30,000 votes in the matching precincts of those tabulators. It is a pretty sophisticated attack. And I tell people, they say that sounds, and some people think it's nuts. But I have actually run operations larger than that, where we have infiltrated hundreds of credit card machines on behalf of the company that wants us to do so. The credit card machine is doing its proper job, just like the e-poll book and the tabulator were, but it's also sending out additional data that we are hoping is stolen by gangs, that we are tracking that data to find them. And we've done this in the numbers of hundreds. So here you have a perfectly functional machine that's also doing additional and nefarious activity underneath it.
Okay, that's good. Thank you, Tony. But you see how basically what he's saying is, and this is why you want that paper ballot vote counted. Again, I'm not signing on to this necessarily, but he's saying the paper ballots don't exist. It was done through the information that you could then match up with voters and put through electronic bullet ballots, essentially.
And honestly, we could do a sample run to test the electronic votes compared to the paper votes with some mathematical formula. Let me just say, I actually with Stephen Spoonermore, a friend of mine, 20 years ago, was an award-winning producer at ABC News. She was doing a deep investigative piece on electronic voting machines. Stephen Spoonermore was one of the people we interviewed, and I was incredibly impressed with him. He's a total nerd, a real genius, a lifelong Republican, but he's not alone. There were a group of 8 computer scientists that also put out a letter to Kamala Harris. But I don't think the Democratic Party has the guts to do what the Republican Party does. We're certainly not going to storm the Capitol. But again, I say, Mark, why not count the paper ballots? Let's just count the paper ballots.
Look, the GOP showed up to every court that was open and contested an election that was uncontestable with no evidence. They certainly would have counted the ballots. And all my trolls, my designated trolls on the show, oh my God, Mark off the deep end with the bizarre ballot, Starlink conspiracy, serious, quote, deep state imagination on Mark's part. Mark is signing on to this idea despite what he claims. We're down the conspiracy rabbit hole here. I mean, great. Just count the ballots, dude. I'm not asking you to build a government agency for this. I'm just saying count the ballots. What about this, though? Copper says, but the polls match the votes. It would be different if Harris was way ahead in all the polls. It was within the margin of error, even though we talk about a Trump victory.
Yes, and people don't know this, but the total election was won by Donald Trump by about 232,000 votes.
Right.
So little tiny variations. And honestly, if you're going to do this kind of hacking operation, you're not going to make it too close and you're not going to make it too big. You're going to hit right in that sweet spot so it seems logical and plausible.
Yeah. Agreed. Count the ballots, says Adam. I want peace of mind that it's Americans that are nuts. I do think count the ballots. I don't see what the issue is. But as you say, I guess the issue is that you're up against the clock and Kamala Harris seems to have no desire to go forward with that. I don't get why, but, I'm sure she's licking her wounds on some level, and maybe she feels there's a certain kind of radioactive quality to asking for a recount after having been through 2020. But that said, I just don't see why you roll over for the kind of administration that we're going to have. So I know you're working on several things, Richard Greene. Please mention what they are so people can follow you who have an interest in getting into some of the stuff that you're doing.
I think the reason Donald Trump won, beyond any sort of nefarious activity, There certainly were a lot of people who voted for him based on what I believe is a broken information system in this country. Unfortunately, not every American tunes into the Mark Thompson show. If they did, we would be in a different place. I mean, you're a real journalist. You're giving thoughtful conversation. You're putting out facts that are not disinformation, that are not lies. And so I'm pulling together 50 to 100 influencers, professors, thought leaders to actually crowdsource a new Substack called Project 2026. And of course, I've invited you to do it, where every day we put out actual factual information on issues that are very prone to misinformation and disinformation. So that'll be launching soon. In the meantime, my TikTok at Civics Dean, and I had a TikTok that I did on election night. I was just like, my way of healing, my way of coping is to just communicate things and try to put out ideas. And that's my mom. My mom goes viral more than I do. And I got over 2 million views on an idea, which I still think is a great idea, which is that Joe Biden steps down 2 or 3 or 4 weeks before the end of his term and allows a woman, Kamala Harris, to be the 47th president of the United States. I know it's symbolic. I know it's not deeply meaningful.
It's a great way to troll Trump.
And all the merch that says 47 on it, they're going to be out there celebrating Kamala Harris. And I just think that, we don't have a lot to be happy about, but that would be something to be happy about. And, it would be a great thing for Joe Biden to do, add to his legacy, to literally have the first female president. It's like Roger Bannister, right? We didn't think we could break the 4-minute mile, then he did it. We don't think we can have a female president. Let's have that image for my daughter and women across the country of a woman sitting behind the Resolute desk in the Oval Office.
Well, you're getting some support in the chat. I love it. Stay in touch. Please come again. Always enjoy our conversations here and off of this platform as well. So get in touch, Richard, and I'll help you in any way I can. Richard Greene, the Civics Dean, everybody.
Love you, Mark. Thanks.
See you, man.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah, I think it's worth, recounts. Again, I don't know that you'll change the election outcome, but I don't see why you guys are so like, oh, my God, it's this is a crazy conspiracy theory. I mean, I don't know. I think Democrats are entitled to a recount the same way Republicans basically jacked up the whole country over not believing that the election was. They're not telling you come to Washington January 6th. It's going to be wild. I mean, they're not replacing the attorney general with a hand-picked attorney general to try to smear the election return. All they're suggesting here, those who want it, is a recount. I just don't see why that's an issue. Votes don't count. If the votes aren't counted. Thank you. Nullifidian. Yeah.
Do we have enough money for a recount? Isn't that expensive?
I believe that you're right. It is expensive, but I think Kamala Harris can ask for it, and it does have to be underwritten by the feds. I'm pretty sure that's true, but in any case, you have
to cough up the cash.
In any case, there is, I know, a fundraiser underway, an ongoing fundraising operation to pay for that. So I think you could certainly start it in the swing states. It's the money, says Mo Flo. No,
I don't know if it's the money. It might just be that this is the way Democrats think things should go. The traditional transfer of power without a lot of drama, without a lot of legal battles. This is, it was some say a decisive victory. And so, maybe this is the calming way that Democrats think it needs to be.
Oh, I think that's exactly what it is. But I suggest to you that it is not the right way to be. I mean, I think the Democrats are past the expiration date on being that party that always moves along and gets along. It's crazy. I mean, you could see them on any number of significant issues be respective of, that is to say, respecting of roadblocks that were parliamentary. Remember the parliamentarians said that we can't take this up because it doesn't technically fall within the budget. You'll recall that whole thing over it was involving the infrastructure bill and certain things that could be included and couldn't be. And the idea that you would respect the parliamentarian, let me tell you, the GOP comes in, you know what the parliamentarian told them? This is true a couple of times. Parliamentarian said, well, you know, technically that doesn't, they got another parliamentarian. They got rid of that one. I mean, I think those are the Democrats. Democrats tend to roll over. And so those of you who are Democrats now, I think you need to have them lean in, be more aggressive. I mean, again, I think you can play within the lines while still being aggressive. I think the GOP doesn't play within the lines. And I'm sure you can give me examples of Democrats who haven't played within the line. Randy, what if Musk altered the results in the election? What makes one think he couldn't alter any recount? The idea is that there are paper ballots there or not. If Trump and Musk altered the electronic data associated with a count, this is, again, just the way it goes. I'm not saying it's true. If they altered the data, the count, through Starlink or other means, is the notion, then there wouldn't be paper ballots to match that altered data because the data was altered. So in the case specifically, I believe of Mariposa, or it was some county in Arizona, and Nevada is very much in this play too. All the swing states, they have, you know, attached theories to all of them. The idea is that there's 30,000 bullet ballots that they're positing wouldn't be matched by 30,000 paper ballots. They were put in to the system after the fact. They were put into the system electronically. So that's the thinking on it. We have a tyrant in power. Democracy has been squashed. The three branches of government are now one. The executive branch equals dictatorship. From Rich, he writes it. So Merry Christmas, everyone. Merry Christmas. Gonna be a good time. Yeah.
The Mark Thompson Show.
All right, smash the like button. Look, what I will tell you is I'm not going to be like the one thing that we have to be in mainstream media, which is we can't take in any of these stories. I think we can take them in, and I'll run anything up the flagpole if I think, you know, it has some degree of plausibility, and I thought this did. Mark, a forensic audit and investigation, not a recount, is the only way to find inconsistencies and facts and evidence, says Phineas. Well, apparently we're at 0 hour when it comes to asking for even a recount. And so when it comes to a forensic audit and investigation, I don't know where that sits. I mean, look, I'll be, thank you, Vilma says, count the ballots. By the way, Tony, I'm glad you're here. Vilma, who, as you know, is an OG on this show, one of the originals from KGO. She says that somehow her name is not showing up in the credits as a Patreon or PayPal subscriber. Can we double check? Can you make a note, Vilma? And we'll see if that's indeed the case. I was deeply troubled the other day when Vilma came forward and said, my name isn't on there. We try to get everybody's name, but Tony updates it once a month. So if you're a new subscriber, you have yet to actually make the scroll, but you will. You will. Hey, Gavin Newsome bought a new place, everybody. Isn't that exciting? I mean, come on.
Kentfield. He's moving back to
You never
Marin
know
County.
when that's good.
Yeah.
It's in Kentfield. Yeah. Now, Kentfield is just north of San Francisco,
Right.
in Marin County. Gavin will be very happy there, I would think. $9.1 million is what he paid for the place. The property apparently is resort-like. It's about 20 miles north of the city, as I say. Extraordinary luxury is the way it's described. Floor-to-ceiling windows. La Cantina folding glass doors. I don't even know what that is. I know what folding glass doors are, but I don't know what La Cantina must be, a special high-end version.
No.
Does he get his PG&E for free? Come on, that's funny. Champagne wishes. Well, anyway, suck up to Gavin Newsome, and maybe he'll invite you over. He's being talked about as a possible 2028 presidential candidate. You know,
Kentfield is nice and everything, but I'm surprised he didn't go Tiburon, Ross.
Oh, yes. Yeah, Belvedere.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, Kentfield is so pedestrian when you have all these hoity-toity communities nearby.
Yes, it's Kentfield. Hello, Gavin. It's Belvedere calling. How come you didn't come over and live here?
Exactly.
Kentfield is so hoi polloi. Tony, thank you for rallying a picture of Gavin's new place. Nice sized pool with a hot tub there. I guess they want to enroll their kids in Marin County schools for this academic year. That's why they're doing it, Kim.
Won't be going to the public schools. They'll probably go to Marin Country Day.
Yes, well, there comes a time when one has to
some fancy school.
Consider the private education.
Yeah.
Speaking of education, I have this story, which I think, actually I have a letter from Debbie in Idaho.
The Mark Thompson Show.
This letter from Debbie in Idaho, it's...
I've received a lot of positive letters.
We call it a letter. It's actually an email, of course. But she says, I'm a Christian, strongly oppose this imposition of Bibles in the schools in Oklahoma, she's talking about, I think. And let me tell you how wonderful it is to live in a grass hut here in Idaho at 9,000 feet all year long. If you believe they are only wanting to use this, help me, Kim, with this, will you please? Because Kim will now read Debbie's email from Idaho. Can we do the whole thing again? Hold on a second.
Re-rack it, restart it.
The Mark Thompson Show.
We got an email from Debbie in Idaho.
I've received a lot of positive letters.
She writes,
and here's Kim to write the ship. Go ahead.
Well, here we go, writes Debbie. I'm a Christian and strongly oppose this. And if you believe that they're only wanting to use this to explain art or King's
what is the? I'm sorry. What is this? I'm a Christian and strongly oppose this.
This is a new proposal, apparently, to introduce Bibles into schools in Texas.
I see. Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
She says this is only acceptable to be taught in Christian schools. She said, I pray the vote will fail. Otherwise, other states will follow. Maybe this is how the right supports Trump's declaring the Department of Education should be dissolved and let states control their education. It's one way, she says, to get the ball rolling.
Well, indeed, Texas education officials are going to hold a vote this week on the use of Bible readings in public school curriculum for kindergarten through 5th grade English and language arts classes. There have been hours of testimonies from people for and against this blue bonnet learning is what it's called. It's a new curriculum that will affect millions of the state's elementary public school students. Again, this is in Texas.
So are they going to teach the Bible and the Quran and the Torah or whatever, pick your religious text? Are they going to teach them all or just the Bible?
Please, Kim, there's only one true God. Okay, let's just back off on that. Yeah,
my bad.
So
I'm sorry.
Those in favor of a Bible-infused curriculum argue that the Holy Book contextualizes material about famous artworks or text, like Leonardo da Vinci's mural painting The Last Supper and Dr. Martin Luther King's letter from Birmingham jail. So the Last Supper would be taught to 5th grade students through an account of the final meal shared by Jesus and his 12 disciples, and the lesson would also involve several verses from the Gospel of Matthew. In the instance of Martin Luther King's letter from Birmingham jail, King uses biblical characters in his letter to clergymen around the South. Advocates for this curriculum argue that students would need biblical context to comprehend the letter. So that's a little piece of it. So some would call it indoctrination. And when it comes to the Bible, it seems like you're in sort of funky waters. I think it's interesting that Oklahoma feels so strongly about the Bible. As you know, we mentioned this story a few weeks ago, and then I think we mentioned it again yesterday, that they set up an order for the new Trump Bible, which includes the Declaration of Independence, and they specified, did the Board of Education in Oklahoma, that they wanted Bibles in all the schools there in Oklahoma, but the Bibles had to have the Declaration of Independence, and just coincidentally, there is only one Bible that has the Declaration of Independence included in it, and that's the Trump Bible. So that's become a little note of contention. Don't we have that post from related to the Oklahoma Bible, Tony? Here you go.
I was in the school drop-off this morning, and I was standing next to this lady. And on my bag, I have things that, I mean, would clearly indicate that I voted differently than the majority of the country did. And she's just looking at me, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, here we go. But she looks at me, and I can tell she wants to say something, and I'm trying to brace myself for whatever it is she's going to say, and I'm like trying to distract myself, talking to my kids, whatever. And she goes, I didn't know that Donald Trump wanted to take away the Affordable Care Act. I thought he was just going to get rid of Obamacare, and I was all for that. And I paused because I wasn't sure if she was joking or not. And then I say, those are the same thing. They're one and the same. And she goes, well, I didn't know that. And now I don't know if I'm going to have insurance for my kids or for myself.
Yeah, there you have it. I mean,
that's a regretful voter. And you know what? That's the new thing trending on social media is the regretful voter. People who didn't understand the issues going into this election and now are like, oh, wait, tariffs are going to increase prices? Oh, the economy is going to, be worse than it was before? Oh, they're taking away my health insurance? What? Really? They're going to deport my family? I didn't understand.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. And, I think this is worth noting just generally that most people are not as connected to politics and to news events and what's going on as we are, or many of the people who come and visit this show. So I think it is worth remembering that when you're messaging for those voters, when you're trying to win an election, you have to spell things out. I always talk about messaging and media. I just think it's very, very important. So I think it's something that the GOP generally does very well. They don't seem as bound by a need to represent facts the way the Democrats do, or the libs do, or the left does. But you can even find on the left the way things are and can be exaggerated and misrepresented. I mean, I think you have to call out both sides. But the media blitz, Steve Bannon talked about it, that flooding the zone with bad facts to keep the media busy, tracking down and trying to refute all those facts, that is a strategy, an articulated strategy from Steve Bannon, and it's been adopted by a lot of the right. I love the poorly educated, says No Contendo. Yeah, exactly. So you realize that people are distracted, disinterested, whatever, and they vote, and then they just vote a vibe. If churches choose to be involved in politics, tax the churches, says Lac Macamunis, I think. I know it was only up there for a second. I didn't catch it. Look, I believe you could, there it is. La
Macumeka.
If churches choose to be involved in politics, tax the churches. Look, obviously churches should be taxed. It seems to me clear. Churches, synagogues, whatever your place of worship and whatever your congregation and whatever your God is, you should be taxed. Letting them skate on that is, I think, one more awful thing that America does. It somehow gives cover, and it gives cover legally and also from a tax standpoint to anything mentioning God. So think about the Catholic Church in relation to investigations with priests who are pedophile priests who've committed these heinous acts for decades. And we give the church a pass on it. Law enforcement has for decades given the church a pass. And the church says, we've heard about Father fill in the blank. We're going to handle it internally. We're going to move him. We're going to re-educate him. We're going to, whatever it might be, even defrock him. Okay. First of all, the defrocking is the very last thing they do. They typically don't defrock right away. And shouldn't this be a law enforcement thing? I mean, if that kind of thing was going on in any business or in any other venue, even in your home, law enforcement would get involved. You wouldn't say, well, we're handling this as an internal matter. No, you're not handling sexual abuse as an internal matter. This is something that concerns the people of this state and of this country, and we will intervene with law enforcement. But that's not the way the church works. And so I use it only as an example of how we are hands off on the church. And so you will never be able to tax the church as an institution. Who would possibly bring forward legislation that, even though it is righteous legislation to tax a church, it'll never happen. It is just not a politically viable thing to suggest. So, but I agree. All right. Where are we? I always ask this question a few times during the show. Where are we?
The Mark Thompson Show.
Don't panic. Oh, that's where we are. The Mark Thompson Show. Good. I'm excited to discuss more a lot of these controversial appointments on the part of Donald Trump. And I also got an email from someone who said, you know, one of the things I like about your show is that it gets into politics.
I've received a lot of positive letters.
But it also does stuff that's not political and makes me smile or makes me laugh. And lately your show has been so Trump heavy and politically heavy. And I want to make a quick point before I get to Pulitzer Prize winner David Cay Johnston. Prior to the election, we were ramping up to, I think you could argue, one of the most significant elections in the history of the country, certainly in our lifetime. And you had a highly controversial figure who was going to pay off with every flavor of that controversy in his presidency and his administration. And it was, I think, demanding of a lot of time and attention. So I don't really apologize for the amount of time and attention that we've given to Trump, to Kamala Harris, to emerging issues in the American electorate. I think these are all things that required our time and attention. As this administration sadly becomes the new normal, I think the show will take on an equilibrium that you'll be more comfortable with if you are someone who, you know, is burnt out on Trump or whatever it is. But right now, I think we do have something of a 5-alarm fire going on. And so I think it is important to explore these issues and these personalities and these specifics associated with the Trump administration and an emerging government under Trump that will be very different than any other government that we've seen in our lifetimes. So that is my short/moderately long answer to that email and to anybody else who feels that way. But we will, as I say, reintegrate a lot of the stuff that we've done through the years. But right now, I do think, as I say, there's a certain focus that has to be affixed to what's going on in the news. It's not the MTS gathering, a tax-free church community. Yeah, I mean, I could jump in. By the way, Michael D., you would be granted, if you set up your church, you'd be granted religious status such that you could skate on taxes. Again, it's an awful part of Americana that we grant a pass to anybody who just mentions God, but we do.
We do dispense the rod of...
The Mark Thompson Show.
What is it, Kim? I'm sorry. What is it, my darling Kim?
We do dispense the rod of equity and mercy, and that is somewhat of a religious ritual.
Oh, that's true. On this show, we haven't in a while. We dispense the... You know what? I feel, thank you for mentioning that, we should bestow the rod of equity and mercy onto someone today. So
David Cay Johnston needs it, I think.
Maybe David would, everything else has been bestowed upon David Cay Johnston. Every accolade. He's been lauded by everyone, and rightfully so. So now, without any further delay, let me bring on a Pulitzer Prize winner, the co-founder of DCReport.org. He has written books, best-selling books on Trump, on the wealthiest Americans, how they manipulate the tax system, and essentially how they are coddled by this government. You're going to see a coddling unlike anything I think that has ever preceded it in this new Trump administration. Let's talk to him about what's happening. This is the great David Cay Johnston, everyone. Hi,
Hello,
David.
Mark.
So, David, first I want to check off on something with you. And then I want to get to the appointments and how things are unfolding. The thing I want to check off with on the election is associated with some kind of manipulation of the outcome, whether you are accepting of the outcome, whether you feel a paper recount should be required, given the fact that there are any clouds of controversy around it. Where are you on that issue?
Well, Donald Trump has inculcated a lot of America with his conspiracy theory that the 2020 election was stolen, even though there's no evidence of it. And he and his confreres had 60 opportunities in court, and they couldn't once come up with evidence. There is some evidence of people voting 2 or more times for Donald Trump in 2020 and 2016, but those were insignificant numbers of people. What's unfortunate is that a lot of people who support Kamala Harris have now bought into that same conspiracy. Dr. Bandy Lee was a Yale psychiatry professor, a tenured professor, someone I knew, and she was fired by Yale for saying that Donald Trump was mentally ill. And much of her work was about how mental illness, just like a physical illness, can spread. Her research showed that followers will adopt the mental illness of a leader. What we're now seeing is something she said also could happen. The mental illness of the leader can be transferred to people who are opposed to the leader. There's no evidence whatsoever of fraud in this election. What there is evidence of is about 13 million fewer people turned out to vote. The Democrats did not do nearly as well as the Republicans in getting out the vote. And one of the unknown questions that will take a long time, but social scientists will eventually give us an answer, is did the vote fall because a lot of people felt, yeah, the country's fine. I don't need to oust the current administration and its replacement, Kamala Harris? Or did they stay home because they said, gee, this is just really awful. I can't imagine Trump. I mean, what are the reasons of the people who didn't vote? But you get out the vote, you win. Donald won. He did not, let me be clear, win a mandate. He won by one of the narrowest margins in the history of the Republic. When all the votes are counted, it will come in at 2%, maybe under 2% margin of victory. That is not a mandate, and not all of his candidates won. I mean, we saw the first transgender senator elected. We saw a number of ballot items that are completely contrary to MAGA pass by voters and by large margins. So don't buy the nonsense, the big lie that this is a mandate.
Could, when it comes to these controversial, I think, polite way to put it, appointments that Donald Trump has offered, could he safely bypass the confirmation process? And doesn't that seem like a likely narrative if indeed he could?
Well, so the framers of our Constitution, the first modern democracy, were very concerned about people getting taken up in the moment, about mob rule. So they made it very difficult to make change. They allowed for change, but made it very difficult. And one of the controls they put on the executive was that principal officers, which means cabinet members, have to be approved by the U.S. Senate, the advice and consent of the Senate. Now, for the first 100 years in this country, often they didn't even hold a meeting. They just had a floor meeting and by acclaim accepted appointments to the Supreme Court and other positions. Trump is trying right now to establish that he is supreme and no Republican will challenge him. That's what he's trying to do. This is an obedience test. Senator Thune, the incoming majority leader, and other Republican senators, you will do what I say. And either they will stand up for the prerogatives of the Senate and the Constitution, or they will bow down to Donald Trump. And this will be a great test. If he succeeds in getting them to go into recess, which they can only do with the cooperation of the House, but that won't be hard to do, so that he can appoint these people for up to 2 years, that will be a real sign of a coming dictatorial regime. It will only take a handful of Republican senators, it looks like there'll be 53 Republicans out of the 100 senators, to insist that they hold hearings. And in the case of Matt Gaetz, Pete Hegseth, both of whom are manifestly unqualified, but more importantly, have serious moral character defects that in any other administration, they wouldn't even be considered. It strikes me that it would be foolhardy of John Thune and other senators to bow down to Donald on this. They should allow the process to go forward. But keep in mind, this is a loyalty test to Donald Trump. James Comey flunked the loyalty test. He was fired. Anybody who is around Donald and all the years that I've known him, if you don't bend to Donald's will, you'll be out sooner or later, usually sooner.
Yeah, and that threat is something that is being offered up now, as you say, in this effort to push this through one way or another. It's being communicated. If you go up against the president-elect's desires to get his staff in place, we will primary you. We will get rid of you. And he's done it before. I mean, I don't know to what extent, he could successfully do it again. But as you say, this first test really, it's offered up in the shadow of an extremely difficult appointee. I mean, the Matt Gaetz appointment, David, is fraught with so many issues. I mean, you've got paid sex with underage women. You've got the receipts. You've got Venmo trail to actually show that it actually happened. You have witnesses to state that it actually happened. So, I mean, leave aside the fact that, Matt Gaetz couldn't find the men's room at the Justice Department. I mean, he's never been in the place, probably, and he was barely a lawyer. He's going to run the Justice Department, and Donald Trump seems committed to dying on this hill.
Well, if he doesn't get Matt Gaetz, he will find somebody else who will do what Donald wants. And what Donald wants is prosecutions of people he perceives as his enemies. He wants to harass out of business the New York Times. He's going to try and find a way to get the U.S. Supreme Court to reverse a decision known as Times v. Sullivan. That's a 1964 decision over an advertisement in the New York Times about the racist way that the Montgomery, Alabama government was treating Black people seeking the right to vote. And it had a couple of minor factual errors in it. And the Supreme Court in that case held that public figures, so you and me, senators, politicians, but not some random person who happened to witness a crime because they were driving down the street, that public figures cannot sue for damages unless you can show what's called actual malice. That is, the journalist knew something was false and they published it anyway. You're never going to win a case on actual malice against the New York Times. There's, so many editors weigh in, and this is true of any significant news organization. It's just not going to happen. There is no actual malice. There are stories you don't like. And remember, Donald Trump said many times, he said to me many times directly, you shouldn't be allowed to write something about me unless I approve it. That's not a free country. That's a dictatorship. But if Matt Gaetz can't do that for him in the Justice Department, he will find somebody else who's not as disgusting. I don't know what other word to use for Matt Gaetz, who went around showing pictures of young women on the floor of the House saying, hey, I did it with that one last night. Gaetz is hated by a lot of Republicans in the House, and Trump in doing this is seeing just how far he can push his loyalty demands. You're also going to see Trump in the military try to court-martial and punish General Mark Milley, who was the head of the Joint Chiefs, and a number of other generals. He's talked about charging them under the Uniform Code of Military Justice with treason, which is ridiculous on its face, but they can come up with a charge to put these guys in the stockade. The difficulty there he will have is those generals and admirals will be tried by other military officers. And I doubt that they will go along with Donald Trump's effort to intimidate the military into being his personal army.
Couldn't he, couldn't Trump do what he did to Vindman, let's say, Vindman, who testified in the first impeachment trial on the Ukraine call? He basically busted him out of government before his retirement could kick in. I mean, he took his own kind of revenge in those ways. Could he mess with, just because we're on the military thing, could he mess with some of these distinguished military figures?
Oh, absolutely. First of all, the president can fire any military officer at his choice. He's the commander in chief. He can block the promotion of an officer, and if you get blocked twice, you're out. He can recall any officer under the age of 70. If you become an officer of the United States military, you are subject to recall until you're 70. So General Milley is in his 60s. They can call him back to court-martial him. He can destroy the esprit de corps and the respect for the Constitution that we have very carefully built into our military, on which we spend an enormous amount of money on education. Many senior officers in the military have doctoral degrees in their fields of study. I've interviewed many general officers of the U.S. military over my career, and more than a few of them I walked away and went, what a jerk. But I've never walked away from one and said, that's a raging incompetent. How did that person get promoted? 9 years ago, maybe it was 8 years ago, but back before the first Trump administration, I said and wrote that if Donald Trump starts firing senior officers in the military and promoting colonels, majors, and captains out of order, you should be very scared, because that is the sign of a military dictatorship. And there are always junior officers who will sell out their country for their own vainglorious needs and their ideology. They get weeded out as you move up into the military. Racist captains or lieutenants and captains who discriminate openly don't make it to general officer. They get weeded out no matter how good they may be at their technical knowledge.
So because we're on the military, I'll just touch on Hegseth, a guy who it seems is utterly incompetent. I mean, I always think of the Pentagon and managing the massive employee base that underpins the Pentagon and the Department of Defense as a management nightmare. You'd need to have some kind of significant administrative background to be able to handle this. This guy, Hegseth, has none of that. I get it. He had distinguished military service, perhaps, but I mean, then he could run a platoon or whatever it is. But I don't see how this works. He was bound, so just on background, just to remind everybody, for this tattoo, this Deus Vult tattoo, because he was there in a protective, protective detail vis-a-vis the Biden administration, and they weren't comfortable with that. I mean, leaving the tattoo aside, David, although it's been, co-opted, I guess, by white supremacists, and Proud Boys have that tattoo, and 3%ers have that tattoo. I don't know if he's either one of those things, but he does seem manifestly incompetent as a weekend Fox host to run the Department of Defense. Will he ascend in your handicapping the situation to that post, or will, as you say, there'll be somebody behind him who might be better suited?
Well, this is another loyalty test by Trump. Will the Senate bow to his will? And we don't know. He has no management experience. He was in the National Guard. He wasn't in the regular army, although he did serve a tour. The tattoo that he's wearing should itself be disqualifying. I mean, if you go to the trouble of getting a painful tattoo that declares to the world your white supremacist views, you have no business being the civilian head of the Defense Department. It's too bad that we don't require cabinet officers to take what's called a desk test. Civil service systems with promotions do something where they put you in a room and they give you like 17 things you have to do in so many minutes, and there's no way you can do it. It's a test of, do you crumble? Do you make smart choices? Do you defer those things that can be deferred? That is, do you recognize those that are, the house is on fire, from those that are, well, we got to get to this, but not at the moment. And I have no doubt that Hegseth and Matt Gaetz would fail such a test. But yeah, Trump will find somebody else if he doesn't get him. And, Saturday Night Live on the Weekend Update had a very funny line about this. Colin Jost came on and showed Gaetz, Hegseth, and one other appointee and said, Donald Trump is announcing the people he's going to fire in 6 months. And, he will get rid of these people for one reason or another, unless they absolutely are totally obsequious to him. Or in a few cases, they may be women who know how to manipulate him. and they will hang on longer, but it requires a great deal of skill. Maggie Haberman of the New York Times has been brilliant at manipulating Donald and getting him. I know a lot of people listening to the show think she's terrible. She's not. She's a genius. She is the one who's gotten him to say all sorts of things that were suspected but not on the record. And Donald is, Donald is like the, never mind. It's,
I mean, he does, she's sort of the Trump whisperer at the moment.
Yes, and Donald just has real issues with women that he's subject, just as he is by dictators like Kim and Putin and Xi, to flattery and manipulation, and because he's a hollow vessel. But you know, the bad decisions he's going to make, let him make them. Let Trump be Trump. Give him his appointments, and then see what happens, because these things shouldn't work out, and they should blow up in his face. And maybe some of the people who bought the con, the marks who voted for him, they will come to realize that this is all a facade. The man is a con artist and a bully.
You are uniquely, perhaps, situated to comment on this, and that is the rise of Elon Musk as sort of, I think he sees himself as a co-president almost, the way he is at every meeting. He's on significant calls right now. And again, Trump isn't even president yet. And he really did help win this election for Donald Trump with his money, with his ideas, with et cetera. So my question, and this is why I say you're uniquely positioned to answer this, how long before that relationship becomes frayed? And I just remind everyone that Musk has significant contracts with the government. I mean, massive contracts. Will only get more massive now under the Trump administration. So Trump can be, in a way, the guy who's seen as having leverage right now, although depending on how you play it, the government needs Musk, and Musk could be seen as having leverage. So it's an interesting relationship that's evolving here, David.
Well, this is the very definition of the corruption the framers of our Constitution worried about. They recognize there'd always be individual venality. There'd be the federal judge in Corpus Christi, Texas, who was manipulating divorced women in custody fights over their children to get sex by threatening to fire them so they'd then lose their children. That kind of corruption. What they were worried about was institutionalizing corruption. And we've been doing this for years now. The Supreme Court has passed, as I mentioned on an earlier show of yours, a series of decisions that have basically made bribery of public officials lawful unless you're stupid enough to say, here's a bribe. And so looking at our current situation, we need to recognize that Donald keeps people as long as they are useful to him. Musk's big risk right now is that he'll get in front of Donald. He'll in some way put a shadow on Donald or take away a bit of the light. People who are smart, when Donald calls them to the stage in his campaign rallies, they get up, they speak briefly, they just talk about how wonderful he is, and they slip away. Musk is not like that. He is very much like Donald. And remember, Musk is not a great genius. He didn't create Tesla. He wrested control of the company from its founders. He didn't create SpaceX. He's just a guy who is the far outlier of hitting the jackpot in the stock market again and again and again. And that's why he has all this money. If I were the Boeing company, which competes with Musk in aerospace, I would be very worried. I'm sure Musk wants to do everything he can to hobble them and get in the way. And Donald will, keep Musk and every other one of these people up to the point that in his very jumbled mind, he needs to get rid of him. And then he will.
That is really going to be one that'll be interesting to watch because, as I say, there's so many interests on both sides, but the personal side of it is, I knew you'd have the key point, which is watch the limelight, because if you get into Trump's limelight, he will get rid of you one way or the other.
One of the things we should worry about, Mark, just 1 second. Judge Marchand today in the criminal case in New York got the report from the New York District Attorney on what do we do. And the New York District Attorney Alvin Bragg's office said, well, given the unique circumstances, we shouldn't certainly throw out a case where a jury has ruled. We should defer sentencing. I don't think that's right. I think you should defer imposition of the sentence. And I may have misread, because I did it in a hurry just before we came on the air, the filing. But Donald Trump should be sentenced by Judge Marchand for his felonies, with the imposition of the sentence stayed until January 21st of 2029.
Yeah, in a way, I suppose that falls into the category of, all of this stuff, put it on the back burner, but the back burner is so far away that, we likely will never see it. But your point is...
It's a desk set test.
Yeah. So I have a question about an economic thing, and I thought maybe you could bring it to light, or just at least give us a state of the state on this. There's a lot of conversation and a kind of tug of war going on over the Treasury appointment. And leave aside the personalities involved, although I'm sure that those are very important. I mean, everybody is sort of supplicative, and and they're all in their own way, sucking up to Trump. But more to the point, there's a fork in the road here when it comes to crypto. There is a big move in this new Trump administration, surrounded by tech bros as he is, to bring crypto into a sense of legitimacy in the American government that we've never seen before. Can you speak to that and just that effect on the economy a little bit?
Yeah, there are some people who become incredibly rich because there was a time when you could buy Bitcoin for a fraction of a penny, and it's now selling at about $92,000 per Bitcoin. So there are some people who've gotten very rich, but there's a huge number of people who have not done well in Bitcoin. But Bitcoin is fake money. The US dollar bill is the most accepted anywhere in the world. If you go to Argentina, which has a terrible economy and a terrible monetary system, with $1 and $5 and $10 bills in your pocket, you can get huge discounts. You go to Egypt, you can get huge discounts from people. They'll give you 10 times the official exchange rate to get American dollars, because they are backed by the full faith and credit of the United States government. So long as the US government stands, we cannot go broke because we have monopoly control of our money. But if we go to crypto, as a bunch of people around Trump want to do, and make it legit for the government, now you have something which is not backed by the full faith and credit of the United States, which is can itself collapse because it's based on nothing. And I've written a number of pieces about the amount of real money people will spend to acquire fake money. It's extraordinary. And at some point, the whole cryptocurrency world will fall apart. I thought it would have happened long before now, but we live in a new environment with the digital age. But the US government has no business being in, and there's no real use for crypto other than fraudulent behavior. It started out, its principal market was drug dealers, vice lords, people engaged in various kinds of tax avoidance or hiding money from business partners and spouses. And there are a number of papers by economists arguing the same thing that I'm saying here. This is not some far out idea among people who understand money and economics. That's, I think, right in the center. And people who think that crypto is going to help us, you have to ask yourself why. Explain the mechanism that you think will improve. Now, the other thing we're going to face is if Donald Trump continues the tax cuts for the richest among us, expands them as he says he's going to do, and gives some tax cuts to people down the income ladder, and increases spending as he will have to do for things like deporting millions of people. There's no way anything can happen to the US government except much more red ink. We could have a $3 trillion red ink annual deficit under Donald Trump in 2 or 3 or 4 years. Elon Musk and Vivek Swamy, mispronouncing his name.
Yeah, right, Vivek Ramaswamy, yeah.
Yes, they're both billionaires, and they make these wild claims that they can cut 25% of the federal budget. Anybody who knows anything about the federal budget knows that's nonsense, because you've got Social Security, Medicare, which Trump promised not to touch. You have the military, which Trump says he wants to spend more money on.
Yeah.
And now you're talking about way over half the budget. When you add in interest, now we're at 75% or so of the federal budget. Now, if you want to shut down the food safety programs in this country, where we inspect food processing plants and we trace things, you can do that up until a bunch of people die one day because the canned beans they ate were dangerous.
Right. There's going to be a lot of closing stuff down, or at least proposing it. And just on that point, and I know that they pull these figures out of their rears, but still, $2 trillion are going to trim. I mean, this is what Ramaswamy and
out of
Musk
$6 trillion, it is impossible to do that unless you want to do some other things. Now, it could be that Donald Trump will go against what he promised people, and he will radically slash our military. We have 800 plus known U.S. military bases overseas. He could decide to close all of those. He could decide to shrink the size of our military and our civilian military force, which altogether is about 3 million jobs. I don't expect he would do that, but it could be done. And it would also be, depending on your point of view, the end of American dominance or the American empire. Would certainly be welcome by the expansionist leaders of China and Russia, who both want to take over neighboring countries for their own glory.
Well, there's no fat like the Pentagon fat. It's absolutely, it's absurd. I mean, the waste is manifest. It's incalculable, literally. They couldn't audit it, right, David?
Keep in mind that they keep flunking their audits. But right. I suspect the reason for that is that a lot of what appears from the outside to be waste is secretly funded programs. When we were building, we have jet airplanes that can fly at 5 times the speed of sound, and they glow red hot from the friction in the air. Those were secretly funded programs, and so one of the things we don't know is how much of that. Tim Weiner's book on the Pentagon and the black box budget does cite some really terrific examples of how we never paid $675 for a hammer. That right. was hiding money for some other purpose, which I have fundamental problems with, except in national security. We ought to give the government, since we do live in a very dangerous world, a fair amount of discretion about how much disclosure they make.
You mentioned Ukraine and Russia. You mentioned Russia. I'll mention Ukraine. There has been something of a sea change in our disposition toward use of our missiles over there. Can you speak to that?
I was just on overseas TV talking about this. Joe Biden has been very cautious for almost 3 years in equipping and helping the Ukrainians. He held back on really lethal weapons systems and electronics systems, but especially weapons. Only in the past year have they gotten F-16 fighter jets, for example. By giving the ATACMS missiles, which have a range of about 200 miles, 190 miles, and carry a payload of a little under 500 pounds, they're giving the Ukrainians the weapons to stop Russian incursion or further incursion and help them hang on to the land around Kursk in one of the Russian oblasts. Trump is clearly going to come in and tell the Ukrainians that they have to give up some of their land. And their bargaining chip is, we've got some Russian land. You want land, we'll swap. I think Crimea will continue to be under Russian control because Putin needs a warm water port, one that isn't like Murmansk, locked in ice in the winter. And having Crimea gives him a warm water port in the Black Sea. But you're going to see huge pressure brought to give up land. And the Russians, there's been some renewed talk of the Russians using tactical nuclear weapons. That would be a sign of how weak Putin is. It would provoke an enormous response from Europe, the European members of NATO and Canada, even if Donald Trump sides with Vladimir Putin, as I expect he would do. And so that's, I think, highly unlikely to happen. The Russian army is radically under-equipped. I mean, they are using tanks from World War II. They're using trucks from the Cold War era. And where they would need 100 what are called 6x6 military trucks to move men and equipment, they typically have 1 or 2. And so they concentrate their soldiers, who are almost all conscripts, many of them came out of prisons, in large locations that are vulnerable to attack by the Atacam missiles. And so allowing these missiles, late as it is in the game, should help the Ukrainians minimize losses if they are forced by Trump into surrendering some of their land to Putin. And by the way, we should never forget that Russia signed a treaty promising that if Ukraine would give up the nuclear weapons in Ukraine, they would never invade Ukraine.
Yeah, and we said if they gave it up, we would see to their defense as well if they gave up those nukes.
We absolutely did that. And Putin keeps pushing this argument that Ukraine is really just part of Russia. I'm sorry, 1,000 years ago, Kyiv was a metropolitan city, 1,000 years ago, with maybe 100,000 plus people living there. And Moscow, 1,000 years ago, was literally a couple of huts in the woods. If there's a mother country here, it's Ukraine is the mother of Russia.
Well, it's such an economic engine, too. I mean, the agricultural power of Ukraine. And so
manufacturing, mining, a whole bunch of things. And that's, of course, why Putin wants it. But Putin does not just want Ukraine. He is so clearly on the record that he is going to take back Moldova, Slovakia, Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia, Poland, if he can pull it off.
Wow.
And I have by marriage relatives who live in the old former Iron Curtain, and they're very clear. If Putin wins Ukraine, the tanks are coming and they're going to be back under the boot of the Kremlin. So, if you hate freedom and you love dictators, let Putin have his way.
It's going to be, I suppose, alarming on some level to watch Trump's disposition toward Putin and Russia and their designs on, as you suggested, Eastern Europe. So we'll have to see. David, I've kept you, I think, a little bit over time, but I always enjoy our conversations, and I look forward to the next one.
Glad to be here, and I keep hearing from more people who live back east like me about your show. So you're clearly building a larger audience, and I congratulate you on that. And earlier you mentioned about some listeners and viewers not being so happy about the amount of emphasis on politics. They have a point. Nobody would want to read a newspaper in which all the articles were by investigative reporters. You need to have sports. You need to have some light features. You need to have some funny stuff. You need some animal stories. And so I hope, you've done some very funny things that have come on before my appearance in the past. I hope you guys keep that in mind and you build a bigger and bigger audience, because we need you. We need you a lot starting January 20th.
Well, thanks a lot. We will get the equilibrium back. It's just obviously in the ramp up to the election, I think we have been politics heavy. Kim, did you have anything for David?
I saw an article yesterday. I just wanted to run past you really quickly. And it is that seeing as how Trump is not wanting to run background checks on his nominees, there's a call now for President Biden to order these background checks before he leaves office so that they can get the ball rolling on these background checks, give these senators some type of background information when these nominees come before them. Is that realistic?
Biden is something of a Boy Scout. It's been one of the biggest problems with his administration. Merrick Garland, a totally decent man, but who slow-walked investigating Trump and some other things until he had very solid material to justify what he was doing. I would be surprised if he does that. Under the Supreme Court immunity decision, there are a whole bunch of things that Biden could do right now. I don't think those are going to happen. Biden is got a secure place in history, and unlike Donald Trump, cares about his legacy. He has been the economically most successful president since Lyndon Baines Johnson in arguably more successful than Johnson, despite all the people who believe the nonsense that, the economy is in the toilet. 107% of the jobs are going to people who came out of the jails in Venezuela. Just see the stories that came out today about how overloaded the Orlando airport is. People only go to Orlando for either a convention or vacation. It's not a manufacturing center. It's not Detroit or Cleveland or Cincinnati or even Rochester. And our economy is doing fabulously. And I don't think Biden is going to do anything to upset his place in the pantheon of American presidents at this stage of the game.
He's definitely an institutionalist. You're right about that. And you're right about Garland. He's just, he's the gold medalist of slow walking. Thank you. That's great. Thank you, David. I look forward to next week. David Cay Johnston, everybody. So long, David.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Well, thank you for being here. Smash the like button. I don't know why it's important, but
Smash
it is.
It with your iron
The next
rod.
guy who comes on can tell you why. It's Tech Tuesday, so we'll check in with Jefferson Graham in a moment. But I definitely appreciate everybody who's supported the show through the many months and years now. We just celebrated our 2-year anniversary with this show, and we're keeping the lights on, which is the best part. But we keep the lights on with your support, so I thank you. Dakota Blue Skies, how about a super sticker and shout out? Big shout out. Big shout out for Dakota Blue Skies for a $10 super sticker, $9.99. Big shout out. Twice. Are you kidding me? I wonder if that was by accident. Anyway, Dakota Blue Skies, we give you a thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yes, very much appreciate that. No Contendo says, question, Mnuchin, Jamie Dimon, any more failed and or compromised private sector appointments coming? Deportation impacts on banks, retailers, etc. Yeah, thank you for the $5 super chat. Look, the impact economically of the deportation, should they get them underway, is manifest, right? You're turning the economy on its side from the standpoint of agriculture, restaurants, sanitation. There's a dark economy, if you want to call it that, in all of these areas and all these spaces, slaughterhouses, et cetera. And these are places that are populated enormously, overwhelmingly with people who are not in this country legally. But sometimes they've been in this country for decades, and their kids are Americans, et cetera. But leave aside the human part of this. Let's just talk about the economic part, which you've sort of alluded to. You'll have to replace all those jobs somehow. You're going to need people to here legally. It's going to be a lot more expensive. You're going to get pushback from employers. You're going to get pushback from the business community. Plan on pushback. Now, Trump will handle it one way or the other. Everybody loves it. I'm hearing from business leaders how much they love it. But again, if you're really serious about trying to discourage immigration that's related to economy and economic opportunity, you would sanction employers, because employers offer the incentive to employees to work in different places. And if employers knew that they'd be sanctioned, there would be fines associated with hiring somebody who was undocumented, well, then they wouldn't hire them. But they're not going to sanction employers, because they know the dirty secret that we have, which is that we need these people here. West Theory, and again, you got to control the border, but I'm just talking to a degree. You need to populate a lot of these businesses with those people who are undocumented. West Theory, one of our OGs, thank you for the $5 super sticker. Thank you. I got a new Patreon member as well. Let me quickly tell you who it is. I'd like to celebrate a new $25 a month Patreon supporter. How about it for Sean McElroy?
Big shout out.
Yeah, Sean. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And thank you so much, Sean.
Thank you so much.
We live off of Patreon and PayPal supporters because we know we can count on a certain amount of money coming in, and that lets us keep the lights on. So if you'd like to join that group and our community, which has grown, I first want to thank everybody who has been with us since the beginning. We have, from the primordial ooze of a talk radio show on KGO Radio, we were able to come here and continue the show on some level. We've had to adapt. We've had to change. We continue to evolve. And you have made it possible. So all of you on Patreon and PayPal, the OGs, the people who have been here since the very beginning, I thank you so much. And I recognize you in the way that we can every day by scrolling your name on the screen. And I hope it warms your heart to know that we are so very grateful. I tell everyone, we wouldn't be on without the audience of Patreon and PayPal supporting us. And also, of course, all the super stickers and super chats help us every day on this platform. Anyway, there are Patreon and PayPal links under this video, under all the videos. Tony puts them in under every video. So you just have to click on the link, Patreon, PayPal, and then enter the information. And it's secure, and it's a way to join our community of supporters. Thank you. Now, Trump's brilliant immigration plan, Louis says, equals destroy the U.S. economy and Canada will have to build a wall to keep the U.S. out. LOL. Yeah. Well, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, it's all pretty crazy these days. When was the last time you heard my fruit picking job was going great until the orchard replaced me with migrants? Yeah, exactly. Americans don't do it, says Murphy. And it's true. And there have been experiments in the Central Valley where they've actually raised the price, the hourly wages, the price of labor has been raised. So the hourly wage is increased. I think the article I saw, this is a few years ago, it might have been $25 an hour, something on that order. And they hired a bunch of Americans and nobody made even 2 weeks doing it. Nobody. It's excruciatingly hard, and they can't get American citizens to do it. That's the dirty little secret. So anyway, that's a little bit of what's going on, a little bit of where we are, and
The Mark Thompson Show.
It is time to check in on Tuesday with a guy who knows his tech. Longtime tech writer for USA Today. He flipped him the bird. He jumped in his convertible. And he began his trek across America and the world, doing Photo Walks TV on YouTube. How about it for the great Jefferson Graham? Look at you.
Good to see you.
Back at home. Back at home, finally.
Yes, here I am.
You've been on the road a lot. I love your stuff from the road.
October, yep. New Mexico and the gold country of California.
Yeah.
Fun stuff.
I'm truly envious. Just seems like a really cool life you've got there. You still have one foot firmly on technology, which is what we like to exploit. So talk to me about what's going on with tech, and might the tech bros that surround this incoming president be good for technology? I guess you can forget about any breakup of Google or any breakup of Meta or any of these other big companies.
Actually, Google not so good, because the tech bros that you refer to feel that Google has been squashing conservative thought, and all the algorithm is against the right wing. And Trump actually started an antitrust case against Google while he was still in office in 2020, and that case is come through. Here we are 4 years later. Bloomberg reported this week that the Department of Justice is going to recommend that Google be forced to sell off its Chrome browser, which supposedly makes more people use Google all day long. And, I know these people are supposed to.
You think that'll happen?
It could. It could. I think these people are smarter than I am, but this one I don't get, because Google is Google because people love Google. And that's just the way it is. If they loved Bing, they would be using Bing. And they don't. And it's been out. Bing has been out for 10 years and has had plenty of opportunity. And also, more people use Microsoft computers than use Apple computers. Bing is the default search engine on Microsoft computers, and people go out of their way not to use it. So I don't see how this is going to help the cause, which is basically helping to get alternative search engines in there. I know, I just don't see it.
Yeah, it's very interesting. When you put it that way, you realize, it really is, if you serve a better product, people will use it. There isn't any kind of brand loyalty here. They're loyal to a brand that they enjoy using. So that's a great way to frame it. I wonder what the narrative will be. You know, if Google really could part with Chrome, it'll be a different entity. It'll be a different animal, won't it?
It won't be that different because we'll just go out of our way to still use Google. It's, you know, yes, it's my browser, and yes, every time I do a search, I'm doing it within the Google browser, but I'll just go to google.com. Or, I mean, the other thing is ChatGPT has gotten a lot better, and we'll start talking to ChatGPT. But as I think I've said on the show, I tried going one day with ChatGPT as my default browser, and I didn't last very long. I mean, it was very frustrating. A lot of ChatGPT is very good, but it can't find me the show times at the movie theater. It can't tell me what time this restaurant's opening. There's all those little things. I can't get the link to the Mark Thompson Show on YouTube by saying, show me the link to the Mark Thompson Show. And they don't do links. So it's going to be frustrating to people.
Hey, tell me about one of the things that is driving me nuts. I got the new iPhone.
Yes.
And one of the things driving me nuts is all the different adapters, because I have a bunch of adapters in the house. The old school plugins, they need adapters, so I can never find the adapter I need. A bunch of the adapters don't work. I buy them, and they're made in China or something, and they've never worked. You have to return them, but it's only $10. Do you really want to drive down there for $10, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. What's happening with the... I see something in a note you sent me that the headphone adapter is no longer going to be sold.
Yeah.
Tell me. Okay.
Well, that is when they came out with, I think it's the iPhone 7 or 8. It was the 10. They came out with the 10, and with the 10, they said no more headphone jack. But it's okay. We'll sell you a little adapter. It'll go in there, and you can plug in your wired headphones. Well, they've stopped making it. Now they have gone from the 10 to the 11 to the 12 to the 13 to the 14 and the 15 and the 16. So it's a whole different story now. Also, that headphone adapter went into the old Lightning port, which was the old way of charging the old phones, and now they use the USB-C cable. Now, anybody who needs a USB-C to Lightning cable, you can buy them, just not from Apple. If that's USB-C to headphone jack, you could still buy one, just not from Apple. But Mark, I'm going to have to do a house call because I'm real big on cables. And I just did a piece for my newsletter about how the hotels have all these charging outlets for you, but they're using cables from 5 years ago, and none of the new cables plug in. So basically, all the new devices run on USB-C.
That's the thin. Yeah, go ahead.
Which is the thin one. And I mean, every device I have is USB-C.
Anymore. Now I need to plug them into a USB connected thing and that plugs into the wall. What's the thinking behind that?
They were just saving money, but I have zillions of them, and
good. Well, bring zillions up here.
Will I? I'll do a newsletter post showing people the exact brick. You bought the wrong brick. That's the only problem, is you got the wrong one. And I've got a bunch of the wrong ones. I mean, it's incredible. I have nothing but these bricks that don't. Anyway, but okay, we'll get you a new one, and you'll be very happy.
You see how this has on both sides? It's got the C.
Right.
Okay.
So you just need a brick that has the C on it, and I would recommend one that has two of them. That's what I usually use when I travel. One for me and one for the wife.
Well, send us a link or send me a link, and I'll follow you up that hill.
Okay.
What else is happening in the world of technology?
Instagram announced today that you'll be able to manually reset the algorithm and take away some of the people that they're suggesting and put in your own. It's pretty much for kids. I'll look forward to that because what drives the Trump world crazy, drives many of us crazy too, is the algorithm force feeding us and them deciding what we want to see as opposed to us deciding what we want to see.
Yes, it would. What about Black Friday? Is that you always
Black
say
Friday is next week?
Yes.
As far as anybody would know, it's already started. I went to Best Buy yesterday, and all I saw were Black Friday deals. We've talked a lot about Apple products here. Apple never puts anything on sale except on Black Friday. So if you're thinking about buying an Apple product, next Thursday and Friday is really the best time of the year. They don't discount that much, but they will give you something. They will give you a $25 gift card. They will give you something. So I would recommend, if you're interested, check out Apple next week. Amazon has already started their sale. Everybody else has started their sale. It's not like years past where they had TVs that were $50 and everybody stood online to get the biggest TV. They're discounted minimally, and mostly what stuff is on sale is stuff that wasn't selling. But you never know. Maybe we could buy a nice double brick for Mark for $5 instead of $6.
I'm glad now you're talking my language. I have a question for you that's sort of basic, but I didn't know the answer, and maybe there are others who might also benefit from the answer. And that is, when I get asked about accepting cookies, like, the preferences comes up, and all the time when you go to websites, cookies, managing cookies, etc. I usually just accept them, which I'm sure is I don't know. I just don't have time to sit there and manage cookies on every new site. But my question is, when you close, first of all, you can tell me whether that's the right thing to do, but also when you close out that site, are the cookies still working in your cell phone or whatever? They're still watching you?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically, if you go to a site and they say accept our cookies and you say no, then you can't use the website. So it doesn't really do anything for the consumer, and it leaves the cookies on your computer and your phone. I recommend clearing out the cookies periodically, and they're collected within the browser, that old Google Chrome browser that we started talking about, or whatever you use, the Microsoft Edge browser. Clear them out. That's the stuff that figures out who you shop, what you're shopping for, how old you are, where you live, all that stuff. That's what the cookies are all about.
Yeah. I don't know. There's a sense of feeling violated, and there's also a sense of, I don't care. I mean, I guess on some level, but you're right. Probably housekeeping would say you ought to get rid of them.
I would say do it every 2 months.
Periodically, yeah. All right. Now,
could I tell the little story about what happened in Placerville, California?
Yeah, this is kind of wild. You do have a great story, I think. I was really surprised by it. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm in Placerville, California, which is the heart of the California gold country, little small town, 10,000 population, with a historic main street that goes back to the gold rush era. Really cute. There's no big box stores. I met up with a new friend at a restaurant called Franny's Farm Table. She suggested it, and I walked in, and the lady says to me, where would you like to sit? And I said, upstairs. And she said, what's your name? Jeff. And she's, I thought so. I recognize your voice. I listen to the Mark Thompson show every week, every day. I recognize you from the Mark Thompson show, from saying one word. It was amazing.
That is extraordinary. It really is. And you sent me a picture, of course. There's Tony gets the restaurant right up there. You can see it. The Farm Table restaurant in Placerville.
It's a great restaurant. Yeah.
Now, you sent me the picture, which I should have sent on to Kim. Did you see it? The picture of Jefferson and the proprietor of the Erica.
No.
Yeah.
I love it. Hi, Erica.
Her name is Erica Cookson. How do you like that for the owner of a restaurant?
Cookson. Yeah, that's a pretty strong name. You're right. Well, Erica, thank you for watching the show so frequently that you picked up on Jefferson Graham's voice. Wow. And you sent a picture, and I can't locate it right this instant, but you sent a video, which I can locate, but I can't locate the picture. It's very cool.
We made a little video for you at the table.
Yeah, it was very cool. Franny's Farm Table there in Placerville. Mention our show, and you guys can rap about the show for a minute or two on the way to the table. Very cool. Well, Jeff, it's good that your many days on the road yielded a story that leans, into our show a little bit, which is cool. What is your schedule for the holidays? Are you going to take the operation on the road again, or are you going to be here through the holidays?
Well, I'll be here, but I'm going to San Diego for Thanksgiving on Thursday and Friday, so I will be here next week.
All right, cool.
And then I'll be around all of December, and then in January, I got a lot of travel and a big Route 66 trip next year.
Oh, that's terrific. I still want to get coordinated with you. Maybe you can help us plan a trip in the West. I really want to get out to Bryce Canyon I've never seen, and Zion. So would love to
It's
do that.
incredible when it's snow-capped. You will love it.
Yeah.
Let's do the show live from Bryce. What do you say?
I don't know. Can you get a signal out of Bryce?
No.
Yeah. All right. So that plan needs work. Find him across YouTube. Photo Walks TV, Jefferson Graham. Thanks, Jeff.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
The Mark Thompson Show.
That's wild about Placerville, isn't it? That's really cool. You could walk into a restaurant, somebody recognizes your voice from the show. It's very cool.
That's awesome.
Quite delighted to hear that.
You know, you guys were talking about...
I don't think he does. Yeah.
You were talking about Thanksgiving, and I just wanted to note that we will not be doing the Mark Thompson Show on Thanksgiving and the day after.
That's right. So Thursday and Friday of next week, Thanksgiving and Black Friday, as it's now called, the day after Thanksgiving, we are dark.
Yeah.
Kim is not here Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So we have to, and I'm traveling back to see Mom. It's her first Thanksgiving without Dad. So I'm traveling back Monday. So but we will have new shows Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and we'll record something for Monday. And then we'll be live Tuesday and Wednesday, and really looking forward to hanging out and getting things going with you. I'll really need your support. Without Kim, it's going to be tough. Love me some David Cay Johnston, says Steve. David is one of the smartest people you'll ever listen to. Thank you for the $9.99. Call it 10. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate that in that super chat. The clock on the wall says that we're out of time, but I'd like to get a little news from Kim. Can I do that? How does that work?
I'm happy to provide news.
All right, let's do some news, and then we'll wrap up around here. Got a couple of, I was going to get to some trolls, also some other stuff, but I promise you some good comments on the way out. And, of course, a juicy newscast from Kim. So let's hang for that. We'll do that. And then, as I say, we'll wrap up after that. All right. Kim's news, and we continue. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. Wow. Can't even believe I lost my newscast. Well, let's just go with this one. How about Ukraine is starting to fire U.S.-made missiles into Russia? That according to Moscow, which said it shot down 5 U.S.-made missiles today. This is the first time that Ukraine has launched a strike on Russia since President Biden gave the okay for the country to use U.S.-made weapons against Russia. President-elect Trump's New York City hush money case might be put on hold for years, at least 4. In a series of filings today, Trump's lawyers urged the judge to delay ruling on Trump's argument for presidential immunity. The DA's office also wanted a pause in the case, not a dismissal. So everything on hold for now in Trump's hush money case in New York City. Accusations that FEMA aid was politicized during the hurricane season is now the focus of a House hearing. This happening today. The House Oversight Committee listening to testimony from FEMA Administrator Deanne Criswell after a FEMA official claimed relief workers were told to avoid homes with Trump signs. That worker has said she's being made the scapegoat, that she was just following protocol. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries will be leading his party again in the lower chamber. Democrats elected him for another 2 years today. Minority Whip Catherine Clark and Caucus Chair Pete Aguilar were also reelected. Looks like we're going to get some rain, some big rain in the Bay Area later this week.
They're saying atmospheric river. Huh.
Yeah, and a bomb cyclone. I don't know exactly what that means, but I know it brings heavy rain and snow and high winds to parts of the Northwest through the end of the week. This will be an atmospheric river with flooding rains and mountain snow to parts of Northern California and Oregon, and some areas could see a foot or more of rain. Now that's something. Yeah.
That's a lot. A foot of rain? Are you serious?
Yeah, a foot of rain. Is that crazy?
Wow.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty nutty.
Seriously, what the
Yeah, exactly.
Hate in the House already. Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson says the first transgender member of the House elected this month will be treated the same as any other member. This comes as GOP Congresswoman Nancy Mace leads an effort to ban this trans woman from facilities, including the women's restrooms in the Capitol.
Oh,
Asked
my
about
God. Seriously?
Yeah.
Jeez.
Asked
I mean,
about
really.
Seriously, what the
Yeah, exactly.
Delaware. Her name is Sarah McBride, a trans woman entering Congress in January. Mike Johnson said, "We treat all people with dignity and respect."
No, that's nice.
How
Mike
respectful
Johnson
is it?
said that.
Yeah, well, we'll see if,
Oh, wait.
if he allows the bathroom. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, I mean,
We have processes and protocols and standards.
That's right. They'll somehow twist them. So,
I'm
yeah.
sure Sarah's used to it, but it doesn't make it right, and
Oh,
it's
it's
not
just awful.
palatable to people that are
Absolutely awful. Yeah.
I've never seen anything like it.
All right.
A clemency ruling for Lyle and Eric Menendez will not be coming anytime soon. Governor Gavin Newsome announcing yesterday that he will not consider clemency for the Menendez brothers until Los Angeles County District Attorney-elect Nathan Hochman weighs in on what he wants to do with this case. Governor Newsome says he'll defer to Hochman's review and analysis of the Menendez case before the governor makes any decision about the potential clemency. Current DA George Gascon had said that he supported a resentencing of the Menendez brothers, which could lead to their immediate release on probation.
That is a damning non-answer.
I don't think that they deserve to be let out. I've said it before. We had that hunky DA on. Who was the guy we had on? We had a hunky prosecutor, writer now. What was his name?
Oh, I forget his name. Courtney's
Mike
boyfriend?
Murphy or something? He was a total...
Matt. I think it's Matt.
Matt Murphy.
Yeah.
He said, give me the case again right now. I'll try it in front of a jury and I will convict him in a week.
Yeah.
He said they're so guilty and this is total BS, this abusive thing. This is, the notion that it was an abusive household and, Anyway, so it's interesting. And as to Gascon, he had to say that. Gascon had to say, because that's the progressive in him speaking. So anyway, he couldn't let down the progressive wing of his party.
To his detriment.
Of his constituency, I should say. Yeah, go ahead.
A hacker has reportedly gained access to testimony in investigations into former Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz. President-elect Trump's pick for Attorney General has been accused of sexual misconduct, but has never been criminally charged in this and has denied any wrongdoing. Reports say a hacker accessed a file that contained 24 exhibits, including testimony from a woman who claims Gaetz had sex with her when she was 17.
Morning.
Yeah.
Well, good morning to you. The file
Exactly.
included sealed files from the House Ethics Committee and Justice Department. This, according to the New York Times. The Ethics Committee is expected to meet Wednesday to decide whether or not to release its report on Gaetz, but it looks like the hackers have it, so we'll get it one way or another.
That's pure speculation.
It does seem as though that we're going to hear it one way or the other.
Let's Mike Johnson off the hook. They're going to have it anyway. It's okay to be released.
Yeah.
A New York judge has reportedly agreed to postpone the start of Steve Bannon's trial for defrauding supporters of President-elect Trump after his defense requested it be pushed back into the new year. This is the case where the money that he was collecting to help build the wall in Mexico instead allegedly went into his own poquito, right?
Well, he did say in the we ran those ads because there were big video ads running with his partner saying 100% of the money that you contribute will go to building the wall on the southern border. And of course, he was right about the 100% of the money part, but he was not so honest about where the money was going because 100% went into his pocket. And so, and he split it with his partner, of course. So that's what that's about.
So the judge has moved this trial for Bannon, was due to start December 9th. Now it's been pushed back to February 25th. This according to the Courthouse News and the Associated Press. Bannon's legal team had argued it would need more time to respond to new evidence brought by prosecutors. Seems like they had a lot of time. I mean, he was in jail. What else was he going to do, right?
Right. I mean, it's been a couple of years now, let me just say. But look, these witch hunts, I just hope poor Steve Bannon can finally clear his name. My God.
A Los Angeles County resident unfortunately, it did not survive a tangle with the E. coli outbreak linked to contaminated organic carrots. Public health officials confirmed this is the one death nationwide directly connected to this E. coli outbreak. So far, 39 people have been infected across 18 states, 15 of them hospitalized. 2 of these cases were in Los Angeles County, including the fatal case. So the carrot situation is not over yet. Embattled San Mateo County Sheriff Christina Corpus is refusing to resign. Corpus telling KGO Television, that's ABC7 in San Francisco, that she has worked very hard to reach her position and she has no intention of calling it quits over what she calls unfounded accusations against her. The County Board of Supervisors recently voted to urge Corpus to resign after an independent audit found Corpus had an inappropriate relationship with her civilian chief of staff. Corpus blames the accusations on the Old Boys Club, and she said that they were threatened by her promotion to the role of sheriff in 2023. So she's not resigning. Lastly, this is quite a thing. There are some Southern California amusement park goers that are now recovering, trying to get their sea legs back. Nearly 24 passengers on the Soul Spin got stuck at the Knott's Berry Farm ride for more than 2 hours Monday.
Oh
Look
my
at this.
God.
Some of these people were dangling upside down, their hips and their legs dangling for more than 2 hours. When they finally brought these people down, some of them couldn't walk right. They had to be carted off in wheelchairs. Park officials say technical difficulties caused this ride to stop working. The ride ended up being stuck in a horizontal position, and numerous passengers were suspended sideways in the air until they were rescued. I mean, some of them were sitting upright, but look at the way this ride is situated. Others were doing the dangle. So,
oh my gosh,
isn't
that's
that wild?
unreal.
Imagine
That's a nightmare.
Imagine if you were upside down and the blood was rushing to your head for 2 hours.
Yeah. The vomitron, says True Tech. Exactly.
And you're afraid to move because the ride's already malfunctioning. So now what do you do?
The vomit comet, they say, Phineas.
Oh, man.
Everybody's
No,
renaming
thank
it.
you.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, 2 hours. That's a long wait.
Oh, my God. How about going to the bathroom? Here you go. Rich says it. They peed. Of course. How you gotta? What are you supposed to do?
Yeah,
Hold it in upside down for 2 hours? That's like some kind of bizarre tolerance exam in the military. It's crazy. It's like it's one of those survivor challenges.
Does that ride look miserable to you? Like, I would never even get on that thing. Look at the flipping people around.
Well, now I wouldn't get on it. I mean, it's my God. Apparently every few months it gets stuck. God.
Oh my gosh. And if you did have to go to the restroom while in the air, does it trickle down on the other people below?
That is what's being asked in the chat. It's funny you say that. I'm not even going to read it.
Yikes.
It's so gross. Worse than waterboarding, says Julie. Yeah.
Well,
I do not. Yeah.
All
Well, so that was going to be our next big viewer-listener event there at the Tilt-A-Whirl or whatever the hell they call it there.
Not anymore. It's not.
Yeah.
Nope. All I can say is I'm glad I'm here on the ground drinking my Coachella Valley tea.
There
This
you go.
report
Yeah,
is
you know where.
sponsored,
Yes.
yeah, by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. They've got the new Christmas blend coffee. They've got
Oh yes, they do. Oh yes,
the
they do.
new winter solstice tea. This stuff is incredible, and I love it so much that I cannot live without it. This is the truth.
No,
CoachellaValleyCoffee.com.
that's about the best endorsement. Can't live without it. I
cannot
just
live
love
without
it.
it.
You know,
My
who
life
came
is
over?
way better.
Who came over to the house today for morning coffee?
Who did? Anthony?
Anthony Davis, my new boyfriend from Great Britain. Yeah, he's our favorite Brit. He and his wife just came back from Las Vegas. We were talking about Las Vegas. In fact, I'm going to have him talk to us about Las Vegas because Anthony Davis with that British accent talking about, and he has a very different take and a very different approach to Las Vegas than do I, and it really is kind of fun. So he's going to come by. But he had Coachella Valley coffee with me today, and we have it together in my kitchen. And I encourage you to make it part of your kitchen for the holidays. They have the holiday baskets. And again, CoachellaValleyCoffee.com, as Kim was saying, and I was interrupting. Mark T is our discount code at checkout. Mark T. and you'll get 10% off anything. So coffees, teas, whatever they have there. It is a boutique, small business, and he is terrific. Cliff, the Roastmaster General there. There's the holiday blend for 2024. Put it in your basket and get $10 off.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm going to give some of these tea samplers as gifts this year.
Oh, that's that's a good idea.
Ooh, it's a wild idea, but it just might work.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
Maybe I'll give some Christmas blend coffee as well.
Yeah, I love that idea. Good
what
stuff.
I like about the website is that they have the, as you say, the tasting notes, but they tell you exactly, what kind of blend it is, what what the notes of the blend are. It's so great because almost what you're getting before you even get it and before you even taste it.
That's right. That's right. Now, Kim is exactly right. They let you know all these different aspects of the very thing that you're getting. They're very hands-on. Like if you need any help, they're there to help you. And they've got a good relationship with all of our listeners and viewers. So definitely use our discount code at checkout, Mark T, CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Shadow Stevens. This is the Mark Thompson Show. Keep it to yourself.
Who's Mark Thompson?
We are wrapping up, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I see people, somebody taking me on the Menendez brothers. Oh, my gosh. I don't want to litigate the whole case here. And I have to get my litigator back in. Maybe we should get him back on, Kim. You know, the hunky litigator who just wrote the book. I think it's called The Murder Book, actually. Harry Magnan, Wes beat me to it on the super sticker and super chat.
Big shout out.
Thank you. Big shout out to you, Harry. You're an OG also. Thank you for being here. You are wrong. They were abused, Mark, for years, says Barbara Booth. Well, Barbara, you and I disagree about that. I think there are legitimate disagreements you could have over it. I'm not going to go through all of the transcript, but if you've gone through all of the transcript of the trial, I'd suggest to you that there is considerable question about just that thing. I know one thing. Once mom and dad were dead, the Menendez brothers were spending money like sailors on shore leave. I mean, they were unbelievably spendy. Not just buying Rolexes and buying a new car, which they did, but they were investing in new businesses, and it was an explosion of mom and dad's cash. And they perpetuated the lie that the shotgunning of mom and dad was done by the mafia, right? By the mob. You know all of this, Barbara, because you say I'm wrong. So I'm figuring you know the facts. So if you go back and look at the facts, Barbara, I'd love to have a conversation about it. Again, I didn't major in the Menendez trial in college, but I did look with interest at the way in which this trial has sort of taken on a life of its own, and in the fullness of time, how people have sort of changed their disposition toward the Menendez. And this is the last thing I will say. And of course, the documentary film and then the dramatic retelling of the Menendez thing, that got everybody on board, somehow, those poor Menendez kids. So again, if you're part of the Netflix brigade that saw that drama, then, it was a serialized drama, then you probably feel as though Lyle and Eric were, it was the only thing they could do was to shotgun blast their parents to death. But I'd suggest to you that if you go back and actually look at the specifics, that they actually are guilty. So there you have it. I'm glad I live in a blue state, says Nancy Wright. Yeah, it's the blues have some blues right now. The blues have
housing
the blues.
And the pricey gas seems to be a good investment right about now.
Yeah, I am telling you what, man. It is, but it's tough to be blue these days. Obsequious is a ding word. When did we say? I forget when we said it, but I will trust
it. At the beginning of the show, I believe. Yeah.
Why is Greg Palast the only one talking about voter suppression? Says Durham.
Speaking of Greg Palast, he will be on the show Thursday.
I love it. Greg Palast joins our show Thursday, and he's talking about voter suppression on a level of millions of votes. So these are determinative numbers when you get up into millions. So
some
that's
new
good news.
Information and new details to report to us as well.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, new reporting is what we wanted from Greg. We didn't want to just bring him on with the same old story. We wanted definitely some new reporting, and that's indeed what he has. Nancy says this will be the most corrupt president in history. I would say he'll certainly give it a run. It's an odd brag, but Trump definitely will.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I love our time together. I really do. Tony, we made it through a whole show without any technical issues. How much fun is that? You
We
did
had
a great
one
job.
with Greene. We had that mess.
Oh, we did have it with Richard Greene. That's right.
Yeah. Lies.
Chopper.
Lies.
Yeah.
Tony fixed it. Tony's good.
Yeah, Tony will fix it in post. Yeah. Check out the After Party Live with Kim next over on the After Party Live channel, where they do it live and they do it after, and then they party.
We'll do it live. I can go write it and we'll do it
the
live.
After Party Live.
Subscribe. Woohoo!
Yeah. So tomorrow, John Rothman joins us, and the return of That's Rich, which is a segment we do about the people who've got the money, what they're buying, where they're going, and what they're doing. That segment returns tomorrow. Thank you for all the ways you show us love. And now,
I'm Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
We're out of time, everyone. Thank you.
Out of time. Bye-bye.
Until tomorrow. Bye-bye.